Thank you. Item number 2 is
Okay,
approval.
wait. That's 7 present with 1 absent. If the record would also show that Directors Durante, Fraga, Fuentes, Higgins, Hobson, Ross, and Chairman Dillard are all also present.
Thank you. Item number 2 is approval of the minutes from January 18, 2018. Any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Director Melvin, second by Director Coltel. Roll call.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Colson? Director DeWitt?
Yes.
Director Cotel?
Yes.
Director Melvin?
Yes.
Director Troiani?
Yes.
Director McGallis?
Aye.
7 ayes and 1 absent.
Thank you. Item 3A is a presentation of the quarterly performance report. Jill?
Good morning.
Morning.
I will be presenting the quarterly performance report. We provide this report on a quarterly basis at the same time that you are reviewing quarterly budget results to certify the service boards are in substantial accordance with their budget. The comparisons in this presentation are for the full years 2017 and 2016. First, let's look at system-wide ridership performance. Using data from the National Transit Database, we can see annual regional ridership results over a 15-year period. Compared to 2003, ridership in 2017 was 2.1% higher, totaling 585.9 million trips. However, through the fourth quarter of 2017, we see a ridership decrease of 3.2% compared to 2016, a difference of 19.4 million trips, making 2017 our region's 5th consecutive year of decreased ridership. This chart shows RTA system annual ridership by mode for 2017, represented by the blue bars. The orange dot within each bar represents the peer average ridership performance for that mode. CTA bus ridership is down 3.8% compared to 2016, and rail ridership dropped 3.5%. CTA bus ridership losses were somewhat favorable compared to its peers, with an average loss of 6.6%, while rail ridership losses were about 1 percentage point unfavorable to the peer average. Metro ridership was down 1.9%, also 1 percentage point lower than the peer average. Pace Bus showed a 1.4% ridership increase in 2017, whereas each of its peers reported lower ridership compared to 2016. Vanpool experienced steeper losses, ending the year 9.6% below 2016, a much steeper decline compared to its peer average of negative 3.7%. ADA paratransit ridership increased by 0.8% compared to a peer average decrease of 0.7%. Here's a look at 2017 peer ridership compared to 2016. Each region reported lower ridership for the year except for Houston, which remained flat. This chart shows year-over-year regional ridership using the same peer metropolitan areas that we use in our annual peer review, which we'll present for you next month. The Chicago region ranks 7th of the 10 regions with a 3.2% ridership decrease. On this chart, we are looking at a few of the service and financial measures. Annual performance has some favorable performance for 4 measures, shown by green arrows, along with 2 red arrows showing unfavorable performance. There was an increase in service provided to customers, as shown by the green arrows for vehicle revenue hours and vehicle revenue miles. Each service board reported higher vehicle revenue hours in 2017. Regional operating costs, after being adjusted for inflation, were down 0.5%. Lower operating costs and an increase in vehicle revenue hours produced an operating cost per vehicle revenue hour that was $3.85, or 2.3% lower compared to 2016. The operating cost per passenger trip was $4.43, which is a 2.8% or 12 cents unfavorable compared to 2016, which directly results from lower ridership. Fare revenue per passenger trip was up 2.7% or 4 cents and seems to be a positive result. However, as we've reported in prior quarterly reports this year and last year, both of the inputs for this measure were unfavorable. Fare revenue for the year was down 0.6%, a difference of about $5.5 million. Ridership, as seen on the previous slide, was down 3.2%. The fare recovery ratio, as shown here, reflects the ratio of fare revenue to operating expense without any credits or exclusions. A recovery ratio of 36.4% is 0.7 percentage points compared to 2016, resulting from lower fare revenue. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments of the board? Yes, Director Hobbs.
On the van pool, has Pace given you any indication why the van pool has decreased so significantly?
Yes, they have. As a reminder, I think we've talked about this before. Van pool as a percentage of all ridership is very, very small, so we'll keep that in mind. One of the biggest indicators that they're finding is you have to sign up for a monthly membership, or rides, I should say, subscription. And there's an increase in telecommuting and not working 5 days a week, so they're thinking that there's maybe a direct correlation between those two.
Gotcha, thank you.
What about the other alternative sources of transportation, whether, for example, the taxi access program, Lyft, and all these other companies that are out there? Are we looking at the impact that that's having on, I know it's having a major impact on ADA, but what, as far as with the taxi program, but what about Pace, which I would think would be the next one that might be impacted by that, or even the shuttle system?
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to examine that as much as we can. The data out there there's not a lot of good data out of there, but as we kind of covered in the strategic plan, the competition from the TNCs, the Lyfts, and the Ubers are definitely impacting ridership. We're just trying to figure out where that is and how that is, and I think it's over the spectrum of different services as well. So that's a thing that we're working with all three service boards to see if we can examine more.
Because from a budgeting standpoint, that could be a positive thing for us. I mean, if they're going to pick up the last mile, for example, or to reduce the need for van pools, but then we need to readjust those budgets and get out of that business if that's now void as being covered by the private sector. So
exactly. Yeah, we're talking a lot with Pace about that and different ways that we can be innovative and try different new services.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? If not, we'll go to item 4A, which is resolution certifying the financial results for the fourth quarter 2017. B.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. So today we will review the year-to-date financial results, which are subject to certification. Service Board's financial results through the fourth quarter were satisfactory. Ridership continues to lag in budget in December, consistent with the previous trends, as did operating revenue, while expense performance continues to improve. The regional recovery ratio finished the year above budget at 51.3%. So at the end of the presentation, I will be recommending that the board certify that the results of the operations for each service board and the region as a whole are in substantial accordance with the adopted budget. This recommendation is based on the unaudited results being presented today. If the audited results differ materially, we will come back before the board and inform the board. But before you look at the results versus the adopted budget, we will look at one last time at the reforecast dashboard. As you know, we've been doing this for about 4 months, showing not only the actual to the adopted budget, which you passed in December, but also the reforecasted amount in October, and then we compared their actual expenditures to that, so you would see how both of them were faring. The lack of highlights on this dashboard shows that the service board's actual results finished very close to their reforecast. This is important because it solidifies the base that was used to develop the 2018 budget. So we've gotten some questions, as we discussed, Director Regales, about, well, what are we doing if we don't come in? So the 2018 budget was based on the reforecasted amounts, which will make it, of course, more realistic. Should those sales tax projections or other results not come in as planned, we will have to come back before you and request a reforecast, but we're hoping we don't have to do that. Collectively, ridership is essentially at the reforecast, while operating revenue and expense both develop favorable variances compared to the reforecast. These favorable variances largely offset the unfavorable public funding, which has been falling short of the lower amounts adopted by the board in August. In the upper right-hand section, the net financial results of the service boards were close to reforecast, with CTA and ADA somewhat a little worse than expected, PACE better than expected, and Mentra, which is right on target. The highlighted PACE ADA favorable operating revenue variance of 8.6% is due to the receipt of Medicaid payments, which again is a timing difference. Okay, let's go back to the original dashboard. So looking at system ridership through December, it was 3.4% lower than budget, as shown by the, let's go to the ridership, yeah, sorry. Okay, as shown by the orange bars on the chart. So ridership has been down from prior year in each month of 2017, and total ridership is down 3.2% from 2016, which you just heard Jill speak to. The ridership chart provides a good basis for visualizing seasonality. Director Lewis asked about it this month. Of course, he's not on the phone. So I wanted to take a little time to discuss how service boards incorporate the month-to-month variation in their budgets. As you can see by the dashed budget line, ridership levels are fully expected to fluctuate from month to month, and the actual ridership results shown by the bars follow the same pattern. So system ridership is significantly higher in the spring and the fall months, and it is lowest in the winter. Ridership is higher in the spring and fall because school is in session and it's a non-vacation season, so the workers and students are riding consistently the system every day. Historically, October yields the highest ridership levels because it is a 31-day month with generally fair weather and without any major holidays. The service board's fare revenue forecasts generally mirror the monthly ridership pattern, while their expense budgets and the sales tax budgets have separate, distinct seasonal patterns, but these are also built in by the service boards consistent with historical trends. In summary, when we show a variance from the budget, remember that it is a departure from the expected results, which already includes the seasonality built in. Back on the summary table, the service boards reported year-to-date ridership results below budgeted levels. As indicated by the red boxes, PACE Suburban Service ridership was 6.9% unfavorable to budget, and ADA paratransit ridership was 5.7% unfavorable. Although PACE remains unfavorable to budget, December did mark the 8th consecutive month of year-over-year ridership growth for suburban service. So CTA ridership is also highlighted in red, with total ridership 3.4% unfavorable to budget. CTA bus and rail ridership are down 3.8% and 3.5% respectively from 2016. So now looking at operating revenue. This was $29.1 million, or 2.5% unfavorable to budget. The shortfall is due to the combined effect of unfavorable fare revenue and the lower level of reduced fare reimbursement from the state. CTA has most heavily been impacted by the reduction in reduced fare funding, while PACE Suburban Service has the most substantial fare revenue shortfall due to lagging ridership. Both are highlighted in red. The public funding, now let's look at public funding, of the dashboard shows a shortfall from budget of 4.7% for the region, as the full impacts of the 2% sales tax surcharge and temporary 10% PTF reduction continue to be felt. CTA and Metro were unfavorable to budget by 6.6% and 5.9% respectively, both highlighted in red. However, both PACE Suburban Service and PACE ADA are showing favorable results in public funding variances. That's because their responses to the funding reduction, including cancellation of a planned transfer of operating funding to capital, and the board-approved usage of an ADA paratransit reserve fund, and those are now reflected in their actual results. In total, public funding is now $75 million unfavorable to the original 2017 funding amounts. And I wanted to break down the $75 million just so you kind of get a feel for where that's all coming. About $32 million of that is due to state budget actions, reductions. $14 million due to the 2% sales tax surcharge, which began in May, earlier than we expected, and $18 million due to the 10% PTF cut, which began in July. The remaining $43 million is due to sales tax coming in lower than expected, the real estate transfer tax, and the associated PTF match shortfall. But it is offset by the cancellation of the $7 million PACE transfer to capital and the approved use of $6 million for the ADA reserves. But obviously, it's not enough to offset it. I just wanted to break it down so you know where that $75 million is coming from. Looking at operating expenses through December, they were $93.6 million, or 3.5% favorable to budget, with CTA, Metro, and PACE each reporting strong expense performance through the end of the year. So that's the bright spot. CTA had a 4.3% favorable to budget expense performance, highlighted in light blue, due to savings in labor, fuel, and injury and damages expense categories. PACE Suburban Service had a 3.8% favorable to budget expense performance due to savings in administration, maintenance, and operations expense. And PACE ADA's unfavorable expense variance continued to improve in December, and it finished the year, but it's less by 1% unfavorable variance. This trend is consistent with the action plan that PACE staff submitted, the corrective actions, during the second quarter certification process. When you look at the regional level, the favorable operating expenses were not quite strong enough to offset the unfavorable operating revenue and public funding that I explained. So it produced a system net variance, which was still $10.4 million unfavorable to budget. Now on to recovery ratios. Through December, the regional recovery ratio is favorable to budget by 1.2 percentage points. The fair recovery ratio finished the year at 36.4, and the all revenue recovery ratio was 42.8. So we look at it as the pure recovery ratio than the one with the credits. In the right section, we show the year-to-date statutory recovery ratio of 51.3%. So that's above the required 50% level. Metro's recovery ratio finished significantly favorable to budget, and CTA was also favorable. PACE lagged budget by 1.2 percentage points in their operating revenue shortfall. So now looking at the certification of year-to-date financial results through the fourth quarter. The sales, the slide displays the variances of each service board's operating deficit from budget. Each service board, except ADA Paratransit, had a favorable variance in the operating deficit, and Metro and CTA's favorable variances exceeded 3%. So the combined regional operating deficit was $64.6 million, or 4.1% favorable to budget. ADA's unfavorable operating deficit of 1% is within the 2.5 threshold of end-of-year compliance contained in our substantial accordance guidelines. Accordingly, I recommend that the results of operations for each service board and the region taken as a whole be found in substantial accordance with the adopted budget for the year-to-date financial results through the fourth quarter. That concludes my remarks. In the ordinances and on each of the individual service boards' recovery ratios, you'll see that they exceeded their recovery ratio, except for the ADA PACE paratransit. So even though we negotiate hard and we get a lot of pushback on what those recovery ratios should be when we're setting the budget, you can see that they're all not just meeting them but exceeding them. So that's very positive news. They're very conservative with their expenditures. They're not going to spend what they don't have. Even though we did reforecast the budget, they came in within those numbers. So we're pleased with the results. The ridership you've heard, it continues to be an issue, and we're going to continue to monitor it closely. But, I mean, these are good results overall for the year.
Thank you, Bea.
Thank you.
Just to add to your comments, fortunately the service boards are managing their expenses, because that's what really makes this work out at all at the end. When you look at the revenues that are down as much as they've been, whether it be from the state or the sales tax or whatever. So they're doing a good job across the board. Are there other comments or questions about the document? Okay.
Thank
No
you.
questions. Can I have a motion, a second to approve? Director Melvin moves, second by Director Anderson. Roll call.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Colson? Yes. Director DeWitt?
Yes.
Director Cotel? Microphone, please. Thanks.
I will call this regular meeting of the Northeastern Illinois Regional Transportation Authority to order. And can everyone rise for the pledge